Tonight, Canadian leaders condemn violent protests as NATO meets in Montreal. Arrests and injuries after demonstrators clash with police.
What we saw was actually violence, hate, and anti-Semitism.
Anti-NATO and pro-Palestinian groups rally in the city's core.
We have a group was there just to destroy the windows, the cars.
Max Chaudhry.
Deepfake technology taking advantage of vulnerable people.
They sent me the videos, and I said, yes, that's definitely not me.
The cost of doing business with the loonie at its lowest level in years.
My local customers, they suffer because I have to increase the prices for the product.
Plus, the end of the Eras tour for Toronto.
I don't think we've had this growing up where there was an artist that brought mothers and daughters together so much.
Celebrating 6 shows and an economic boom as Swifties set their sights on Vancouver.
It's just so cool.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. There is widespread condemnation from politicians following a night of violence in Montreal. Pro-Palestinian and anti-NATO demonstrations turned violent Friday night as NATO delegates meet for the annual assembly. Protesters clashed with riot police. Cars burned and windows smashed in the chaos. 3 people were arrested. The Prime Minister denounced what he called acts of anti-Semitism, a claim protesters deny. CTV's Jeremy Sharon starts us off.
A Friday night protest in Montreal turned destructive. Cars on fire, smoke bombs launched, and windows smashed at downtown businesses. An escalation of what started as pro-Palestinian and anti-NATO protests, which filled the streets of downtown Montreal as NATO officials gathered to meet in the city.
At the end, we have a group that was organized. It wasn't there for the cause. It was there just to destroy the windows, the cars, and really they were there to do some criminal act.
Police say 3 protesters were arrested. 1 officer suffered minor injuries. Witnesses say there were significant clashes between police and demonstrators. Several protesters were injured by police. At least 4 were taken to hospital. This afternoon, more anti-NATO protests with a similar message, but organizers distanced themselves from Friday's destruction.
We clearly had nothing to do with them. We as a peace movement intend to demonstrate and protest peacefully.
And today, condemnation from Ottawa.
What we saw was not peaceful protests. What we saw was actually violence, hate, and anti-Semitism, and this has no place on our streets.
Demonstrators deny the claim of anti-Semitism, saying they demonstrated against the complicity of NATO member countries in a war that has killed thousands of Palestinians. In a statement on X, the Prime Minister called it appalling, saying acts of anti-Semitism, intimidation, and violence must be condemned, adding there must be consequences and rioters held accountable.
Lawful peaceful protests can be co-opted by anarchists who have other agendas.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre blamed Trudeau for the violence in a social media post, saying in part, this is what happens when a Prime Minister spends 9 years pushing toxic woke identity politics.
The protests are expected to continue as Canada and its NATO allies face criticism over their handling of global conflicts. Heather?
Jeremy, thank you. Canada's defense minister was asked again about not meeting NATO's threshold for military spending during a security forum in Halifax.
We know that we have to do more on defense, and we are going to spend more money.
Members of the NATO alliance have pledged to spend 2% of their GDP on defense spending, but Canada is not on track to do so until 2032. Facing mounting criticism, Bill Blair says there is opportunity for Canada to invest more, but doing it right requires more collaboration with its allies. Tensions remain high in the Middle East, where Israel carried out one of its most powerful strikes on the Lebanese capital today. At least 20 people were killed in airstrikes on central Beirut. This is the fourth time this week the densely populated area has been struck. The Israeli military did not comment about this attack, but acknowledged strikes on Hezbollah targets in the suburbs of Beirut. In Gaza, health authorities say at least 120 people have been killed in Israeli strikes in 48 hours. A female Israeli hostage is among the dead, according to Hamas. Nearly 200 countries have agreed on a new global climate deal after hectic negotiations at a UN summit in Azerbaijan. Wealthy countries, including Canada, pledged to contribute $300 billion every year by 2035. That money would go into supporting developing nations cope with impacts of climate change. But the agreement reached after talks ran over time was criticized by those it intends to help. Earlier today, many members staged a walkout calling for developed nations to do more. Artificial intelligence has many perks, but we're seeing tonight one of the major drawbacks. A deepfake video of one prominent immigration lawyer in Toronto shows how some are using the technology to take advantage of vulnerable people during a time when there's much confusion over new federal rules. CTV's Kamal Kramali reports.
Hi, Mr. Charles Buell. I'm Max Chaudhary.
Believe it or not, this video,
Professional immigration consultant lawyer,
is not real. It's artificial intelligence.
Very disturbing.
Mimicking immigration lawyer Max Chaudhary. He found out about it after someone told him they received the video over WhatsApp from an unknown number.
They sent me the videos, and I said, yes, that's definitely not me.
The number pretending to be Chaudhary, using deepfake videos and asking for thousands of dollars for legal services. How concerned are you about how many people may have viewed this video?
The fear is that it could be tens of dozens of people, at least in the immigration sphere.
When we called the number, no one picked up, but clearly using a picture of Chaudhary on their profile.
That strikes me as another venue or method to target more vulnerable people.
AI is everywhere, on social media and search engines, some of it used to target the vulnerable.
Anybody who we could see as vulnerable, gullible, or in an urgent position might be more susceptible to sort of bite the bait.
Including newcomers to Canada.
When people are desperate, when we are seeing the federal government changing rules so often that it's hard to separate truth from lies, then people will, I think a lot of people might believe it.
Ottawa has decided to significantly reduce its permanent resident targets and limit the number of work and student permits it issues, now believed to be creating a climate of confusion that those lurking in the shadows can use to their advantage.
People are looking for ways to just be able to make sense of this, and they are going to be preyed upon.
Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada says it urges applicants to use the official departmental website for information, and the advice from migrant associations is to not give out any money until you actually receive the services. Heather.
CTV's Kamal Kramali, thank you. The loonie has weakened to its lowest level in 5 years, and economists expect it to remain sluggish for the foreseeable future. CTV's Colton Prale on what that means for your spending habits.
The cost of doing business is getting more expensive. At this European grocery store, the holiday season means marzipan, herring, and chocolates. But importing them is getting costly as the Canadian dollar continues to slide.
My local customers, they suffer because I have to pay more, and I have to increase some of the prices for the product.
Last Friday, the loonie dropped to its lowest point since March 2020. And its 3-year tumble risks falling below 70 cents on the dollar, something that's only happened 3 times in the last decade.
It's a blow, perhaps, to the morale of Canadians and the strength of our dollar, but I don't think that's necessarily a game changer.
It means higher costs for commodities like gas and imported foods, and less spending money for Canadian tourists crossing the border. Economists warn the slump could last for months, with the U.S. interest rate expected to stay at least a point higher than Canada's.
I don't want to even think about the January and February, how to manage all the rent, prices increase, and all the stuff what's going around now.
But it isn't all bad. Export and tourism industries could see a boost to their bottom lines as foreign spenders look to capitalize.
Our resort is seeing bookings at 40% higher than it was this time last year, and that's only going to grow with new nonstop flights.
Experts say while there are a number of warning signs in Canada's economy, the struggling dollar is more about Canada's lower inflation and the strength of the American economy, which has been making gains on currencies around the globe. Heather.
Colton, thank you. Canada Post employees have been off the job for 2 straight weeks now, and there is mounting fear among charities and nonprofits that donations won't make it in during peak giving season, a time when money raised often supports them for the rest of the year. CTV's Sarah Plowman has the story.
Stuffed envelopes sit piled up. A strike at Canada Post means NB Lung can't send radon testing kits out, and donations by mail can't come in.
85% of our donations arrive through the mail.
The bulk of it typically arrives over the next few weeks. As the strike stretches into its second week, charities and nonprofits across the country face a major challenge: how to fundraise at a time when holiday giving starts, but the mail has stopped.
We're pretty anxious, for sure. We've definitely tried to make it easier for people to donate online.
It's a difficult time of year for this to take place.
That's because this is when many organizations raise the money that sustains them for the rest of the year.
We would normally send information to our donors as reminders at this point in terms of donations, which is why we're pivoting to using social media and email and phoning people.
A path to pivot playing out across the country, like at Scott Mission in Toronto, where they're encouraging people to donate online or in person.
This is not about us. This is about the people who are so desperately in need.
At NB Lung, 15,000 people are on a holiday giving list. Instead of mailing them, the team is going old school.
Splitting up our donor database among the staff, and we're actually calling people one by one.
One way to reach potential donors when mail won't reach their doors. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
A person in Manitoba who contracted Canada's first severe strain of Mpox has been placed in isolation. It's unclear where the person contracted the virus, but the Public Health Agency says a contact tracing investigation is underway. Experts say this is a more severe strain than the one that's been in circulation since 2022. Mpox is part of an ongoing outbreak in Central and Eastern Africa. Officials say the risk to public health in Canada remains low. Social media startups have in the past tried and failed to take a bite out of X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. But Blue Sky appears to be gaining ground, pulling people away by the millions. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth tells us why.
14 years ago, Don Spicer opened a Twitter account. It was a productive communication tool for the now retired police officer.
When I was with public safety and I would engage with citizens,
Spicer slowly became less active on the social media platform, which was renamed X in 2023.
over the last year or so, I guess I just found it getting increasingly negative, and I like to surround myself with more positivity.
Last week, he switched to Blue Sky.
I'm seeing a more local flavor and a little bit more respectful.
Blue Sky is billed as a social media platform where followers can create custom feeds, controlling what they see, but limiting the content they're exposed to. Technology analyst Carmi Levy says Blue Sky's popularity is surging and putting a dent in X.
We're seeing some reports of about 100,000 accounts closing down per day. We're seeing numbers coming from Blue Sky. They just hit 21.5 million followers.
Levy also says Elon Musk, who purchased the platform in 2023, has turned off a lot of X followers.
As Elon Musk essentially used X as a giant megaphone for his views, and those who followed his views essentially amplified that as well.
Blue Sky is growing, but X remains very popular, a social media giant with more than 500 million active users.
Is it too big to fail? No, absolutely not.
Digital anthropologist Giles Croach says X needs to address its online negativity if it hopes to stop the recent exodus.
Can Twitter or X survive? Possibly, but it may become a shell of itself.
Which could provide even more of an opportunity for Blue Sky to attract new followers who are leaving X in large numbers. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
South of the border, wicked weather is battering both coasts, killing at least one person. Parts of California are underwater from unrelenting rain while heavy snow hit Colorado, the punishing storm swelling rivers and triggering mudslides in Sonoma County, California. Floodwaters forcing rescues by boat. On the other side of the country, New Jersey is digging out of a massive November snowstorm, all ahead of American Thanksgiving, when nearly 80 million people are expected to travel. Coming up tonight.
You lose restaurants in your smaller communities. You're not losing businesses only, you're losing places.
Facing a decline in Canada's restaurant industry. Plus, the Swiftie era makes moves across the country.